Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's session. My name is Kate Denning, and I am the Head of Professional Development for Europe at ViewSonic. Today in our session, we're going to be going over the SAMR model. This is a model that has been around for a bit of time. However, through the pandemic and through remote learning, we've really lost sight of what needs to happen in the classroom, in person, when it comes to implementing technology. Now, for those of you who are not aware, SAMR stands for Substitution, Augmentation, Modification, and Redefinition. If you notice at the bottom here, substitution and augmentation, they're really just enhancement for tech in the classroom. But the actual pinnacle of where we'd like to be is modification and redefinition, which transforms ed tech and tech in the classroom. Now, with that being said, let's talk about student engagement. Student engagement here equals success. Let's backtrack, though. What do those items mean? We can use those vocabulary words and those fancy words all the time, but let's define them, too. S, substitution, is when technology is just acting as a substitute. There's no functional change. I'll give examples of that in just a bit. A, augmentation, is when technology is acting as a substitute, but with a little bit of a functional improvement. You'll notice that's most of the popular tools here. Also, for modification, we're really allowing a significant task redesign. It's taking it to the next level. And then when we're redefining, we're taking our tech and we're creating new tasks that were previously just simply inconceivable without them. Now, when it comes to student engagement and technology use, they are more in a symbiotic relationship than we give them credit for. Think about the last time any of you were in a classroom as the learner. I'm going to guess that most of us in this room didn't have a smart device at that point in our lives. There was no distraction to text message our crush. There was no distraction to look up Instagram updates. Sure, I was writing letters and notes and folding them funky and passing them secretly, but this is different. Technology and student engagement come hand in hand. What we want to do is get to this top of the graph to redefinition. Now, let's talk about some examples. Substitution and augmentation, easy peasy. These are things we've been doing since the early 2000s. We're taking, for example, how many of you have been asked to, instead of handwriting the essay, to type it up? Bring in a typed assignment. What is that doing? All you're doing is practicing your keyboarding skills, right? It doesn't actually matter what you've written, just you must have it typed. Why? Maybe uploading a worksheet instead of making copies. Great for the environment, but it's really some teacher's way of just saying, oh, I used technology briefly today. Check, made that. Also, using an interactive flat panel. Oh goodness, this one's close to my heart. And I hate it so much, it's a pain point. As a projector, as a display screen, as a chalkboard. Guys, this is not why we spend the money on interactive technology in the front of the classroom, so that it can simply be used as a display. Augmentation. This is where people kind of pat themselves on the back and they're like, yeah, I'm getting it. I'm almost tech teacher level, not so fast. Some of these examples might contain, I don't know, opening up a video on YouTube and projecting it to the class to show how the plant life cycle starts. It might also be where, the school adopts a software that gamifies reading, so they're competing against who can get to the highest level of reading. Sure, but all you're doing is sitting that student in front of a computer, asking them to log in, read stories, complete quizzes, and now you're on to the next level of whatever literacy program it might be. Okay. And lastly, one thing that I like to point out in augmentation here is that we're kind of using this as a presentation software. So have you ever heard of the term death by PowerPoint? That's augmentation. That's when I take away the easel and I put up a PowerPoint and I just keep flipping through slides. Kind of like what I'm doing right now, but don't worry, it's going to be short and sweet, and hopefully the personality shines through and is a little bit more entertaining. That being said, I want to give you just a minute here to turn and talk. And I want you to turn and talk about an example of modification, okay? Because this is where we're kind of on the precipice of changing in the classroom. If you don't mind, I'm going to give you 1 minute, and I'm going to come around and get some ideas from you about how you might use modification of technology in your classroom. Ready? Go. 1 minute. This is a great one. Your name, Preeti. Preeti says she would like to use technology to tell stories. So instead of sitting there with the book during story time, how would you do that? There are so many different apps. So whipping out that iPad, yeah? Or how about in my view board where we have the immersive reader and we can bring up any text, read it to the class, have it read to the class, translated, picking out the parts of speech, of the words in the text. What else? What would you do, Michelle? An evaluation of an experiment. Amazing. So this is an interesting one because Michelle is a STEM expert. And as a STEM expert, you have science experiments in a classroom that can sometimes feel a little bit dated because you have this old school microscope, you have these glass slides and the little pieces of, layers of a leaf, for example. And you need to evaluate this science experiment to see, is it worth the students learning? What standards is it meeting? And are they engaged? Technology can do that. We can have rubrics. We can gather data from those rubrics, all because of a computer gathering that for us. Does anyone else have any other ideas they'd like to share? A little bit louder? Can you tell me? Remote learning, that's right. Thank you so much. So remote learning is part of modification, and guess what? The next one, redefinition too. So you're really above the curve on this one. So this is where students get to generate inspired and innovative work. It's not, notice, confined to pen and paper, but it can be. It can be outside, literally outside. It can be inside with a pen and paper. It can be in a computer lab. It can be on a VR headset. This is where things start to get interesting. So I love to give this example. Just picture this, ready? 5th grade, Kate Denning, reporting live from Hopestown Elementary for today's morning announcements. That's modification. And I loved it because I was in front of the camera and I was giving my peers the announcements for the day, saying the Pledge of Allegiance in the States, et cetera, et cetera. And really, that was my way of getting involved in school and engaging me through technology. It doesn't matter. A film set is also technology. We forget that. Creating podcasts. Podcasts are a simple way for teachers to learn in our spare time, kind of like an ebook. But podcasts are a way to share ideas as well. And they're a way for students to show the projects that they've been working on. I'll just do one more here, and this is a geography example, one of my personal favorites. take the flat panel, we can go on a 3D field trip using Google Earth, using many 3D models, and taking students to areas in the world that they may not be able to get to in their lifetime or at that point. And learning about the pyramids in Egypt, for example, all from a 3D model in the classroom. So, redefinition, great success. Here we go. This is the most sophisticated stage. This is where you're having students take true responsibility for their work. We're publishing work on the internet. We are using virtual meeting platforms, remote learning. And we're actually taking it to the level, instead of just remote learning with our class, but maybe I'm going to meet with an author of a book. And maybe that author of that book lives in San Francisco, but my class is in Nottingham, England. That's completely possible due to the likes of remote learning platforms. We also have one of my favorites, which is recording our work and our presentations. So when we record each other, for example, myself in this moment, I now get to look back with my colleagues and peer evaluate what I could have changed, what I messed up on. Let's do some peer reviews. That's really, really important to give and receive feedback. And lastly, one of my favorites is experimenting with multimedia elements, such as launching websites. Their digital footprint at this point is so important. So that's something that I really like to kind of harp on, is that we're starting from taking a worksheet, scanning it to my Google Drive, then I'm submitting questions virtually, then I'm doing a 3D field trip to Egypt, and then I'm actually creating a production and peer reviewing that production as a class. One thing that I can't stress this enough is, please don't always feel like you have to constantly be redefining. Yes, it's wonderful, but it's not realistic. So I encourage you to strive every day for one of the four. S and A are pretty easy. M and R, a bit more difficult. But once it becomes a regular occurrence in your classroom, it gets exciting for our students, and that's what matters most with our outcomes. Get creative with your technology, and I promise you, you will inspire as you teach. Thank you so much for your time. I will be around for questions if you have afterward, and I look forward to talking to you. Thank you so much.